ENGN Preview Series Episode 16, Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift, with two of the designers, Timo and Tinsku Multamaki. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night Preview Series. This is Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. And you'll notice that this is a Preview Series episode and not the regular episode. Well, you got that last week. We had a little bit of a programming mix-up. You got an episode a week early. That's not the worst thing in the world. So we're just going to drop the Preview Series and give you guys the regular episode next week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my guests at this time. They are the designers of a current Kickstarter, another dungeon crawler, Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift. They are Timo and Tinsku Multamaki. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I see that you've been on. You've been doing the social medias a lot. I saw you did a live Q&A, and you have one queued up for tomorrow. It's a lot going on.
Well, we try our very best because as we are not exactly centrally located nor really famous, so we have to do something else to make our message known.
That's right. Actually, it's funny. We were talking before the show. So this show is about introducing the game, and we will get to the game. The game is Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift. But let's hear a little bit about you guys. You were saying before that you live in the woodlands of Finland, somewhere 200 kilometers north of Santa Claus. Is that correct?
Something like that, yeah. Above the Arctic Circle. It's already snowing here, the winter is here, and now we just wait for the Christmas so that the neighbor Santa Claus can visit us again.
And not the big, like, cartoony one either, like the real one, Sinterklaas, yeah. The one from yore.
Yeah, the very original Santa Claus lives here.
Yes. But yeah,
that's funny. This
is not exactly, like I said, center of anything, except maybe center of wilderness. I think this is about as sparsely populated area as middle of Alaska, just to give you a hint. And we are slightly more north than most of the places where people live in Alaska. So, yeah.
And that's how you guys while away the time designing big, massive dungeon crawlers, I see.
Yeah, well, you need to do something for your passing of the time when the dark nights are long and winter is 8 months long. So what else can you do?
There you go. And it looks like you have a good one. So in terms of the game Perdition's Mouth, I believe it was kickstarted in 2015, or was it kickstarted in 2016?
15.
Yeah, kickstarted in 15 and delivered in 2016. So people know the game. So before we get into it, could you maybe give us an executive summary, a very brief description of what Perdition's Mouth is?
Yeah, it's 1 to 6 player dungeon crawler that has elegant Euro mechanics compared to many of the others. It's fully cooperative, and in this game, cooperation actually means that you really, really need to talk with your friends. It's not just a numeric cooperation. And what else? We have made the game a tad bit darker than many of the other dungeon crawlers, and it doesn't require Game Master. It's also sold out, so that's why we are now in Kickstarter to make another print run of the same game with slightly revised things.
Yeah, so actually, I was going to ask that question. You led right into it. That you're a natural at this. So the revised edition, are there a whole ton of changes? Is that something, if you have the first edition, you need to have some of this stuff? Was it in response to some of the things you heard about the first edition?
Well, there are no real rule changes. Basically, the only things that are being changed is fixing of the typos and small mistakes here and there. And because we didn't do that spectacularly well in the first Kickstarter, we were not able to print all of the 7 base heroes, so now we are offering the 7th base hero. So that's probably something that most people want to have, so that's why we are offering this sort of an upgrade pack. So it gives you all of the new things and upgraded things at very, let's say, affordable rate. But basically, the gameplay is exactly the same. There are no changes. This is not a Fantasy Flight game or Games Workshop game. So we don't do like edition after edition so that all the major rules are changed so that you need to relearn everything and all the rebalancing things and blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that. Mm-hmm. What we want to do is to just provide more copies of the same because we are out at the moment.
Okay. And it's funny because I hear Euro mechanisms and I hear dark theme. We are going to get into both of those in just a minute. But we were saying also before the call that you wanted to make a game that was also at the same time accessible to your 11-year-old. So tell me a little bit about how that plays out.
Yeah, well, our son Väinö is very keen to play Perdition's Mouth. He has been developing it with his father before it was published, and now we have been playing the game as a campaign as a whole family, and it's really, really good time, well spent time with the family. And actually, our son is. He likes Perdition's Mouth so much that he has been making one map and scenario for the game on his own.
Wow.
So he's going to be a game designer too.
Is that going to be included as a stretch goal? The 11-year-old stretch goal?
It is actually there. If you look at the stretch goal map, there is the 82,500 stretch goal, and it says 2 different maps. One of them is mine, one of them is Väinö's.
Wow, that is awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah, and I have to say that we have had situation when we are playing the campaign that me and Timo, we have been arguing about some things, that how do we should place these monsters when there's 5 new monsters, or what is the plan, of how are we going to survive. And after we have been having this 10 minutes discussion, then our son comes there and, hey, mom and dad, how about if we just do like this? And he has made up like the perfect solution for the situation. So yeah, children can also play Perdition's Mouth, even better than the designer. So.
Sounds like you got a little prodigy there, though. So if you have an 11-year-old prodigy, they can play Perdition's Mouth as well.
Yes, he actually taught the game also to his cousins who are age 10 and 12. And those guys are playing also Perdition's Mouth just by themselves. And they really love it.
That's really cool. So I think you guys are trying to find that good balance, which is very elusive, of a game that's really chunky and that gamers can really, like real gamers that have been doing this for a long time, can sink their teeth into, and yet it's accessible enough to where you could play it with a whole family. It's a neat trick if you could really pull it off. Sounds like that's what you're going for.
Exactly. That's what we are aiming to. And some people have said that we have succeeded. Some people have said that, but it has so much blood and guts and so on. But in our family, that has never been a problem.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there is the horror aspect that, for example, when Rado made a preview of the game and he said that, okay, this is an excellent game. He loves it, but unfortunately he cannot play it because his wife doesn't like it because it's so scary. And I was a bit surprised of that comment because I don't feel the horror aspect in the game so much, but I know that there is the horror aspect, and for many like real gamers, the realistic point of view that you have with the heroes, they get wounds and the game gets even more difficult all the time. That yes, there is the horror aspect, but I see it just like a really good social game, a very well spent time with the family.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's talk about themes since we're talking about it right now. So what led to the decision to go in this kind of darker horror route? So I guess, and I want to ask it in the context of, so I play a lot of, Ameritrashy games, like you were saying before, Fantasy Flight, and there's a definite style. and I call it the Peter Jackson style, the guy who made Lord of the Rings movies, where it's very like dramatic and everything is purple and everything is, dashing and, very like out there. But it seems like the European sensibility is a little bit different. It's a little bit more, I guess, gritty, and, you're more likely to tend towards these kind of moodier things. Am I reading that right? Or is that something you brought to your game?
Yes, actually very much so. We didn't want to make yet another fantasy game of knights in the shining armor. We wanted to make a game about average guys who are trying to get past major obstacles, possibly dying on the way. And if they manage, they won't be heroically sung by everyone in the galaxy, but they know by themselves that, okay, we did good thing. And I think it's like that's maybe the biggest difference. I could say that our heroes are not epic heroes. They are of course good at what they do, or at least mediocre at what they do, but they all have weaknesses, they all have feelings, they all have their own motivations on why they are there. It's not because they want to have glory. It's because of their own personal feelings that are driving them to work, not always seamlessly together, but at least mostly together.
Okay. So when did you guys write the fiction of the universe together, or did you have people that were collaborating with you?
Well, I think it's safe to say that there is a lot of material, because we played RPGs for about 20 years in the universe. So there is a lot of lore and legend about those particular heroes, about the surrounding areas, about the cultures and races and even the pantheons and whatnot. So there is quite a rich setting that we are trying to portray, and it's not the typical fantasy setting where everything is black and white, so you are either good or bad. I think this is more ambivalent. If you have ever seen the Witcher computer games, or preferably even read the books, that's an narrative that has very much ambivalence in what is good or what is bad. There isn't a single good or bad thing in that universe. But that's something that we really enjoy, and what we are trying to also accomplish, that there are plenty of shades of gray, but nothing is black or white.
So Tinsku over there is a playwright. Are we going to see Perdition's Mouth, the play, at some point?
Good question. At least you are going to next year meet a couple of the heroes several times, because our son Väinö already has the Simma costume. He was 1 year ago presenting Simma at the Essenspiel in German. And at the moment, I still need to do the circular saw for Olatzabal. And that is something that I'm going to be part of the next year in all the game conventions in Europe.
That's your favorite character, right? Olazabal, the Dwarven Tinker, I think. Or is it Dwarven Tinker?
Yes, it's a female dwarf.
Female Dwarven Tinker. That's very important.
Yes, and I don't know. That was the character that I started to play, and I like it. I like it a lot.
Nice.
Although my family haven't approved a lot about all the levels, because she's quite slow.
Dwarven legs, darn it.
Yeah.
But I think it's safe to say that now that we are into the some heroes being slow or something else. It's an important thing to remember that in this game you should always think before the scenario that what are the optimal heroes for this particular scenario. It's going to be much, much, much harder if you always play with the same hero set. And we highly recommend that you always read first the scenario and then think your strategy and then select the heroes based on, well, out of the living heroes, of course. You select what do you think would best suit for your particular goal. So it's not that you always need to play with 3 heroes or 4 heroes or even the same heroes. So you choose not only the amount of heroes, but also the constitution of your party after each scenario. That's an important strategic hint that we would like to be known.
Yeah, you can ruin your level even before you enter into the dungeon if you choose the right guys. Or wrong guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's make that turn into mechanisms. So I'm seeing, like, let's start with the heroes, since that we're talking about the heroes, and it's maybe give us a little bit of an overview of how you implement the heroes and some of the hand management stuff, and then I have some questions from there.
Okay. So first of all of our heroes have at least one ability that is only like something that particular hero can have. Like the Olatsapal, she can heal hit points. Or Simma, the prophetic halfling, he can heal wounds, but he cannot heal hit points. So if you want to heal both hit points and wounds, you need 2 different heroes to do that.
Could you tell us the difference between hit points and wounds?
Wounds are something that you actually have as a card in your deck, so it's a negative deck building trait. So I think everyone is familiar with the concept of deck building. In this game, you mostly do negative deck building. Your deck starts at the as good as it almost ever gets, and then it gets progressively worse by having more wounds in your deck. So of course you want to avoid that kind of deck building. And then that's the time when Simma comes into picture. So if you want to get rid of the wounds that have been accumulated, you need to start the level so that Simma is there in your team and then is able to somehow find time to actually get rid of the wounds. Of course, there is some nasties that are trying to make it harder. So there are rarely, if ever, levels where you can just breathe and say, yeah, let's do some wound healing. No, not.
There's no pool of healing that you just drink from and everybody gets their hit points back?
No, exactly not.
Yeah, it's funny because the thing that's leapt out to me when I was looking at all the materials for the game is that in most of these dungeon crawlers, their heroes get better. Like, that's almost a selling point, you know? So they don't even focus so much on the adventures or who you're fighting. It's like, okay, I want my hero to get these skills, to get these spells, to get these magic weapons and everything. This game completely turns that on its head. And by the time you get to the final bosses, which, by the way, are still arcing up in power, you're so much worse. You have wounds in your deck. You're at half health. You do the thing, and I really wanted to ask you about this, where the more you get wounded, or the more hit points you lose, the less actions you have. In a lot of games, they do it where it's more, like the more wounded you are, the more you can do. It's like, that adrenaline surge. Here, you're just worse. So as a gamer, I guess as an American gamer, that's weird to me. Like, please sell me on this. Sell me on why that's a good idea.
Well, I think I have explained that quite many times by explaining it in the style that is based on realism. So if you would be a fighter going into sewers of some place and you meet a couple of giant rats and you kill those rats, would you really become smarter or more agile? Or how many of those dead rats typically actually give you a plate mail? Well,
you're right.
I don't see the realism in there. Whereas if you would actually fight the rats, they would probably bite you and give you a rabies. Yeah. And that's a nasty thing. And when you fight against these rats or whatnot, for a longer period, you sleep less, you will be fatigued, you will be wounded, you are bleeding, you are hungry, you are grumpy, and we have to face the reality also in that sense that those fights in the dungeons are typically not well organized. You cannot really say that, okay, we do it this way starting from now. But they are chaotic things that happen somewhere there in the murky darkness. And we want to portray that feeling. It's part of the horror theme, I would say, that there needs to be a level of chaos that you cannot always control. Mm-hmm. And of course, it would be stupid if it would be just chaos. So we had to bring the rondel in to like give us a controlled chaos.
Right. So I'm going to get to the rondel in just a second. I guess, see, I see that, yes, it's dumb that you get smarter when you build a rat or whatever it is. But I think the trade-off is that it's kind of more fun, so you suspend disbelief. So, I mean, is it, I've seen that some people kind of say it's like, oh, that felt like, by the time I got to the boss, I only had like 2 action points and whatever. And that wasn't as quote unquote fun. Do you have a response to that, or is it just like a taste thing?
Well, I think that it's safe to say that we also offer fun. We just offer it a bit differently. In the package of fun that we offer requires that you actually think your actions through, and you get the fun when you actually see that, okay, my planning did work. So it's comparison of fun between level of luck and fun between level of skill, I would say.
So it's fun to be, I think in that video, the Rado said, it's fun to be John McClane at the end of Die Hard. He can barely walk. He has glass in his feet and he has 1 bullet in his gun and he still manages to hit the bad guy anyway. So that's seems like that was the vibe you were trying to go for.
Yeah, that's very much the level of commitment our heroes are showing, but also it's very much the level of fun that you will get. It's not so that you would be able to walk through all of the levels without a single wound. Actually, we have never seen any team capable of doing that. And I sincerely believe we won't see that unless there are people who want to cheat. So
that's a whole different story. You mentioned the rondels. So there's a rondel for the good guys and a rondel for the bad guys. And I like to call it the dance wheel. I think a couple of places that I've kind of looked at, you're talking about this, you're talking about you wanted to make combat more of like a dance. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how all of that came together or comes together in the rondel.
Yeah, I think that it's safe to say that the rondel mechanics were taught to implement the chaotic nature of dungeon crawling in some sort of game mechanics that would be understandable, fun, and easy to learn. So unlike in most of the other dungeon crawlers, you cannot just take your 2 steps forward and smash with your big hammer. However, what you need to do is that you need to spend your action points to the wheel, and then at the wheel you choose that, okay, what kind of action am I going to do? And it could be that it's an action where you only move. It could be an action where you only hit. It could be an action where you, for instance, go to your sleeping bag and have a nap. It could be something else. But it takes planning. It takes not only planning by yourself, but it's also planning with your team. So it's like what I told you earlier on, that in this game you actually need to talk with your friends. So it's not a good game to play if you really hate your friends and you don't want to talk with them. Then you should probably play something like Pandemia or so, where you can do that. But in this game, you actually really need to discuss, you need to plan, and you need to be able to make joint plans that make sense. And so far, vast majority of our players have actually said that it really does work in the same sense as we have explained it to work. Yeah. there's a few people who have said that, oh, but I can't really put my head around the rondel. But we cannot really please everyone. I guess none of the games are something that actually is meant for everyone.
Right. So like the rondel, just to be clear, it's almost like a little pizza pie or a cut up pie or whatever it is. And then every space and every slice in the pie has a different action. So you can have a run, or you can have a dash, you can have a charge, you can have an attack, or all these different spaces. And if one of your friends are in one space and there's no room to be on that space, you have to skip it and move to the next thing. So if you have your two friends, they took up the attack slice on the little pie, then you have to skip that and do something else. So that's where people are kind of like, yeah, it's interesting, right? So some people love it. Like, like I said before, it's like, if you're both on the run, or actually if you're both attacking and you wanted to attack, but you can't, you have to use your action, to rest or to reposition so that you can get a better attack later or something like that. The game forces you to do that, as opposed to just walking up and just, take two steps, wail, take the same attack basically every single turn. So yeah, it's really interesting the way it plays out. I think, like you said, it was popular with some people. Some other folks I've heard, they say it kind of breaks immersion. So imagine you put yourself, I know this is like stupid. None of us have ever been in a dungeon fighting orcs and rats, but still, you imagine yourself in that area and you want to attack. You have a really great shot, but your friend has attacked before you, and I can't attack. And some people say like that breaks immersion. That I don't feel like, it feels gamery. Like now you've revealed the puppet strings. I'm playing a game now, and it just kind of, it lessens the impact for them. So how would you respond to the criticism that the rondel breaks immersion as opposed to encourages it?
Well, I think that the rondel brings up the cooperative side of the game really well, and there are also other slices where you can attack, for example, the charge and so on. But you really need to first plan that what do you want to do as a team, and then you need to plan also that in which order, because now you have to also remember that if there is some of the slices are already taken, then you just jump over it and it doesn't take any action points. So that can also be helpful for those heroes who have less action points and they really need to get to some certain slice. So yes, it requires a lot of planning, and of course, well, I think that in the dungeon, well, everybody cannot attack at the same time. But I like the cooperative side and using the rondel a lot. But it's true that it requires a lot of planning for the team, and also you have to at the same time check the monsters rondel, that what are the monsters going to do next. You cannot be sure, but you know that that statistically they will do two actions. So you know if they are going to attack next or move next, or will they spawn new monsters, and that helps also you to plan that, okay, what are we heroes going to do now? Do we have time to run? Do we have time to kill all these guys? Do we have time to pick up the treasures, or what is the situation? And then, of course, if you are unlucky, the monsters draw from the response deck number 5 and they do everything, and then you are so much in trouble.
So that's the last mechanism that I wanted to highlight, unless you had some more other things, is this response deck. And I think that's where a lot of the quote unquote randomness comes in the game. So there's not a lot of randomness. There's no dice. There's no, the cards are not that don't have a huge variance in your hand. You're basically getting the same stuff. It's just how you deploy it. But the response deck is this deck of basically numbers, right? 1 to 5, I believe.
From -1 to 5, and the average is 2. So that gives you a lot of flexibility, and flexibility in the sense that you will never be able to implement with the dice, because there are 2 of the -1s out of the deck of 36 cards. So how do you do that with the dice? You can't do that. Same goes for really high numbers like 5. There are only 2 5s also. But you can start counting the deck, and many people do. Those who are successful at least watch that how many 5s have been passed.
Mm-hmm. So like when you're attacking, you pair whatever you're doing with a card from the response deck, and then when you run the monster rondel, you also pull from the deck, and it determines how many actions the monsters get. So if you pull a 1, they only get 1 action. If you pull a 5, they get 5 actions. Yes. So there is randomness there, but you try to control it a little bit. And that's kind of how Gloomhaven did it. But I think you guys did it. I think you guys launched basically either at the same time or before Gloomhaven. So, right? Is that correct?
We got very much at the same time, which was one of the major problems. If you have something as big as Gloomhaven starting a week before us, that's not exactly the best possible timing for yet another like dungeon crawler without game master, without dice. So basically the sales pitch in that sense was similar for both us and Gloomhaven. But in reality, most of the players who have played both games have said that, okay, they sound very much the same, but play completely differently. And having played both by myself, I have to say that is true. Gloomhaven is also a great game, but it's quite much more finicky than what we are providing.
I'm not playing Gloomhaven with my 11-year-old unless they're really a genius.
Yes, that comes with more finickiness.
Mm-hmm. So so that I'm talking. That the similarity really is in that response deck. That's what replaces the dice. That's what brings in the quote unquote randomness. But as you were saying, if you're paying attention to the card count, I imagine you can kind of look through the discards in case there's you're trying to figure out okay what's next, and you kind of, and it sounds like at the later bosses, because you are reducing in power, because the party balance is so important. It sounds like it really is to your benefit to card count a little bit and keep track of what's been coming out and try to plan for, okay, we have a couple 5s left in the deck. Maybe I don't have to completely power up my power. I can try to go for that 5 or whatever it is. So there's a little bit of room there's variance, but you've tried to mitigate that variance a little bit.
Indeed. It is good to keep in mind that we want to keep there's some luck, because if there wouldn't be any luck, it would be chess, and then it's a different ball game. We don't want to be there, and we don't want to go into the, let's say, mostly luck-oriented scenarios like Descent, for instance. It's a really great game, but it's not fun if you have dice that hate you actively.
And it is not fun. Okay, so I think that's all my questions about the game itself. Is there anything else that you wanted to highlight about the game, and then we'll transition to how the different approach that you had to making it?
Well, I think it's safe to say that we want to underline also the point that we provide both like a campaign-driven mode, so you can actually play all the scenarios in a row, or actually not all, but many of the scenarios in a row that forms a campaign. Or if you are just like trying your luck for one time, there are also standalone scenarios for those. So we provide 2 different game modes.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I did forget about solo. So a lot of players have played this solo.
Yeah.
You intended, I think it's you suggest 3 characters that you play in order to be able to play a solo, either a standalone or a campaign.
Yeah, and it seems that quite a large percentage of our fans are solo players. We were a bit surprised by the fact, but of course it's a positive surprise. And many of those solo players have explained that, okay, this is one of the rare games where you really can do solo play on a dungeon crawl in a meaningful sense, because the game is actually advocating you to be as smart as you can be also for the enemy placement, so that you can on purpose aim to play the enemies as so that they are as stupid as possible. And the game is built so we really want you to do that. We really want you to think that, okay, how can you optimize also the enemy movement so that it is still within the rules, but allowing the use of as many loopholes as you can find. So unlike many other games, we are telling to our players that, okay, if you find loopholes in the rules, you should actually use them. You should not just say that, okay, this might be a loophole, because there are means of making your game a bit easier by making sensible enemy placement, for instance. And if you don't do that, the enemies will very likely eat you alive.
Yeah.
Very likely you deserve it.
Okay. All right. So, and it's 3 characters. Is there a way to play with fewer characters? Is that what you suggest?
Well, like I said earlier on, it really depends on the scenario. On some scenarios, okay, 2 is the easiest, maybe. Some scenarios you might want to have 6 or something in between. So it really depends on the scenario and of course on the plan that you want to play. If your plan is, for instance, to kill everything that is alive, well, probably you don't want to play that with two heroes. That would be, well, kind of like a harder task than you were originally thinking for. Then again, if you want to run like hell, you probably are quite okay with 2 heroes that are just the fastest heroes with most teleport skills. Mm-hmm. And then you can see if your luck runs, well, long enough. Typically it doesn't.
Okay. So, yeah, so I think that gives people a pretty clear idea of what you're getting when you buy into Perdition's mouth. But when we were talking, it was really important to you guys. That's the message that I got, that you wanted to talk about how this game was made. It was made in a very collaborative sense, which I guess you kind of have to. It's not like your little wilderness town is teeming with game designers, and you have to reach out to a lot of different people. So maybe talk a little bit about how the game was developed and the unique things that you had to do in order to bring concept to the table.
In fact, all the 3 game designers of this small village are in the same house, so it's kind of hard to do it with any of the other villagers. They are reindeer herders or something else, but they certainly are not game designers. Anyhow, we have a collaborative team that actually spans on all of the other continents except Antarctica at the moment. And we are working on that as well. But
you're working on Antarctica? You're getting some penguins to help you out?
Oh, yeah. They are known to be really good game designers. The next game that they are suggesting is called Mass Extinction. But we don't know if it plays well.
You can only play it once.
Anyhow, we are like working the game design angle from a bit different perspective, because all of us are interested on making games and like portraying stories through the games for the audience. So this is not something that we do just to make money. This is something that we do because we like games. If it actually coincidentally happens to make some money, even better. But so far we have only invested all the money that we have gotten to make more games. So this is a collaborative effort, which is crowdsourced. I mean that all of us, me included, we are not getting paid for it. We are getting happier. We are getting excitement. We are getting positive feedback, and maybe we will get a free game, possibly.
At least a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how we do. But we are also an open team. So we have always said that if you feel that, okay, you want to be part of our team, and you feel that you can actually do something, some commitment into the team and do your own part, whatever that part might be, we are always open. So the latest addition into our team, I think joined something like a week ago, and now he's just like everyone else in the team, doing some amount of effort for progressing the game design. So it's also very democratic in the sense that there is no official management. So this is like shared management where everyone does self-management of themselves, but also gives guidance for everyone else. And then it's jointly decided that, okay, what makes sense. So we want to give the credit where it's due. It's not a game that I did or Tinsku did or we did together. It's a game that like 30 people or even slightly more did over 4 years and is still making. And every iteration of the game where we do, for instance, expansions, we ask from the current team that, okay, do you have time? Do you have possibilities? Do you have like typically it's a combination of time, interest, and like a possibilities on real life situations. And if they say that, yeah, sure, I'm interested, then we will jointly decide that, okay, how should we divide the amount of work that it takes to make a whole game.
And I have been really surprised to see that how well this actually works. We have been doing this game developing for years with people that we have never seen. And I was really happy last week when I was in Germany in Essenspiel, and I met quite a many members of our team, and most of them for the very first time. And I had the possibility to learn to know them also as persons and learn to know about their private life. And we had a really, really good time. But when we were there at the booth and our fans and backers came to, and all the visitors came to see that, okay, what game is this Perdition's Mouth? I told that, okay, there are four guys who can tell you more about the game because they have been actually doing the game and developing. And we have people here from different countries, which also is very good because the gaming culture in different countries totally varies, and we can get good feedback from those that, okay, this might work in USA, but it probably doesn't work that well in Germany. So then we need to make decisions together that, okay, how should we do? And that's why I think that we can also develop games that people really like all over the world.
So if someone either that's currently on your team or maybe someone who just really loves the game were to say, okay, I love this game. I have developed a prototype for Perdition's Mouth, the card game, or they're really trying to push the boundaries of now they're making new stuff inspired by your stuff. Is that something that works that you guys would try to work into your system?
Of course, absolutely, and that's something that has already happened. Not exactly the card game part, but many of the scenarios of the Traitor Guard expansion that we just released in the summer, vast majority actually are based on people who were normal backers at the time when we released the actual base Perdition's Mouth. And then they played that for a while and said that, okay, I want to do this and that and that. Then they contacted us, and now they are part of the core team. Their stuff is actually then the one that is being published. Of course, we do that together, so it's very rarely that one person does one whole task all by himself. It's more fun when you do it collaboratively, so that you have friends that you can actually like go through how this scenario is supposed to go, and someone does the game testing and provides feedback for you. Someone else does the graphics, and then it all comes together. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's the only dungeon crawler where the heroes do not level up, but the backers all level up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well said.
Well said. Well said.
I was a backer, but now I've leveled up into a assistant game designer.
Yes.
But my poor hero is still here with his wounds.
I actually brought some of the team members visiting cards, and they read that. Oh, I'm a game designer. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. So, that's a really awesome process. It sounds pretty unique, and it sounds like a great opportunity, especially for the listeners of our show. A lot of them dabble. I'll get people hit me up, say, I just launched this little tiny Kickstarter. In fact, the next preview series we're going to do is just someone who did a really simple roll and write game with his children, and there's no game designer background at all. They're just making games. So I'd love to encourage that. So I guess the last question I'll have is for the future. It sounds like this is something you're going to keep on encouraging. Sounds like it's part of your vision. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about where this is going, once the Kickstarter ends and, beyond that.
Well, I'll let Tinsku explain our next game, because that's the first game where she is the game designer. And
Woohoo!
So I'll let that to be explained by Tinsku, and then I have a few words on like what's the future after that. But I think 2018 is pretty much set already. We have fairly good plans on what we do, and let's hear about that.
Yes, we are having a new game, a trick-taking card game called Darwinning, coming on Kickstarter in January. And that is a game where you can evolve your species. Each player has their own animal, and they want to get on top of the food chain and survive the best in the world. So that is actually the very first game where I have also been one of the designers. Before that, I have only been one of the test players. And so that is one thing that we have been developing. And of course, Perdition's Mouth is a game where we will have more expansions. I think it's a game that will develop and get better all the time, because at the Essen Spiel I met many backers, many of our fans who came to the booth and said that I'm your backer from the first edition, and I was also backer for the Trader card expansion, and I'm your backer on this Kickstarter, and what are you going to do next? What can I buy then? And the next year we will actually spend on the road, the whole family. We will start in mid-January, and we will be driving around the Europe, and we will visit all the biggest gaming conventions that there is in Europe. And we want to meet our fans, our backers, and show our games, play with them. We want to offer also the possibility to play with us. And perhaps we can find new team members also for Perdition's Mouth and perhaps for other games.
Once 2018 is like in the history books, I think that we should have at least the new game, and very likely we will see the next major installment of Perdition's Mouth, which is called Soulspire. Soulspire is something that we had already in mind when we started making Perdition's Mouth, and we had smart friends at that time who actually told us that, okay, do streamline your game so that you don't introduce all of the good things at one go, because many of the gaming mechanics that we are having at Perdition's Mouth are so different from the typical ones that you need to offer them gradually so that it's not overwhelmingly different or overwhelmingly complex or something like that. But I think this Soulspire brings the players to the next level. So if you are an experienced player of Perdition's Mouth, Soulspire is the level up for the players. Of course, it's also level up for the gameplay itself. It offers so many different kinds of scenarios. 4 different factions, and yet it's still, and now you have to see the quotes in the air, still an expansion. So it's not a standalone game. It really does require that you actually have played and mastered Perdition's Mouth at least to a level where you can safely say that I can now play. And it takes some of the components from that. But most importantly, we thought that if we would do Soulspire as a separate entity, separate game, you would need to start by teaching the players how to play the basics. Yeah. And that would be a complicated problem. So we thought that the only way that we can avoid that is by actually saying that, yeah, it's an expansion. You really need to learn first by playing the Perdition's Mouth. And when you have done that, only then can you actually, as a player, make the next step to the Soulspire.
Okay, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. Do you have any last words for the people out there?
Like I mentioned earlier, if you feel like a burning urge to make more scenarios, make some new games, do talk to us and we will help you with whatever skills we have.
And that's going to do it for another episode of Every Night is Game Night preview series. So we'd like to thank Timo and Tinsku for taking time out of their schedule to join us and share about their project, Perdition's Mouth, Abyssal Rift. So just like with all the preview series, we really hope you get a sense for who the designers are as people, as creators who are bringing their passion, in Timo and Tinsku's case, 4 years of passion onto Kickstarter. And I'm hoping that I'm asking decent questions so that you guys get a sense for how the game plays and whether it's worth a back or not. So if you have any feedback, we would love it. So please hit me up on the Twitter. I am at ENGN_podcast. You can contact both Anthony and I via BoardGamersAnonymous.com. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have our website. We have all sorts of places where you can reach out to us. So other than that, the one thing I'll ask you guys for, I'll be asking for it every single time, is please rate us. Give us 5 stars on iTunes or however many stars you want. Rate us on, various SoundCloud or Google Play. The more you rate, the more we show up and the more exposure we get so that we can share all this solo gaming goodness with as many people as possible. So that's it. This is Jason signing off. Later, everybody. I don't actually. Is your son around? Maybe he can hop on the call and say a few words.
Oh, let's fetch him. We told him that he needs to stay quiet because mommy and daddy are having an important interview. But perhaps he can step in. Väinö, just say hi to all the listeners here.
Hi.
Väinö has been he studies English at school, so, something, and you have to remember that he was able to play Perdition's Mouth, where all the cards are in English. He was able to play that before he could read or speak any English.
Wow. So how you doing, buddy?
Say something. How are you doing?
All right. Well, we wanted to say, on behalf of all of our listeners, we wanted to say thank you for designing that scenario and good luck with the rest of your career as a game designer.
He doesn't want to tell anything about the new scenario. He's still finishing it, but it's gonna be a surprise for all our backers.